Are you telling me we just duct tape the reactor core and hope for the best? Corporal Hayes's voice rang out across the bridge of the battered human warship Iron Resolve. The officer in charge, Captain Arar, didn't even flinch. Yes, Hayes, because it worked, didn't it? It was an absurd truth that epitomized the human approach to this war. The Coalition of Galactic Unity, an alliance of over 50 alien species, had declared humanity an anomaly, a blight of unpredictability in an otherwise orderly galaxy. To the aliens, humanity's very existence was a threat to stability. The decision to eradicate Earth and its colonies came swiftly, supported by the cold logic of species who thought in probabilities and spreadsheets rather than instinct and stubbornness. But humanity wasn't logical, and duct tape, as it turned out, was a formidable weapon. It began 5 years earlier when the alien coalition launched their opening salvo, an armada of sleek, energy-efficient warships designed by races who measured their lives in millennia. Their calculations had been perfect, their strategies flawless, and yet they hadn't accounted for one variable: humanity's relentless refusal to quit. "Incoming fire, port side!" shouted Lieutenant Griggs, interrupting Hayes's complaints. Roar barked a quick order. "Rotate shields and roll. Counter-battery fire. Focus on their forward cannons." The Iron Resolve lurched as another plasma barrage glanced off its hull. Sparks flew, but the ship held together, a testament to human engineering philosophy. Build it rugged, fix it fast, keep it fighting. While alien vessels relied on advanced automation and self-repair systems, humans used simpler, replaceable parts. What couldn't be fixed properly was patched up, often with materials that had no business being in a starship. Yet somehow, it always worked. "Griggs, report," ROR demanded. "Shields at 30%. "Plasma reserves low, but we took out 2 of their cannons," Griggs replied, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "Good. Let them know we're still here." Roar turned to Hayes. "Get the repair crew ready. I want that core stabilized. We're going to need full power for the jump." Hayes muttered something under his breath, but ran off to gather his team. Every man on the Iron Resolve knew what was at stake. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was humanity's stubborn refusal to let an alien bureaucracy decide their fate. The Coalition had been confident in their superiority. Their fleets dwarfed humanity's. Their technology was generations ahead. What they hadn't anticipated was humanity's insane capacity to adapt. When the Coalition blockaded Earth's solar system, humanity tunneled into the crust of Mars to keep their colonies alive. When alien warships annihilated human supply chains, humans learned to scavenge and repurpose alien tech faster than their enemies could destroy it. And when the Coalition's leaders sneered at humanity's inefficient and backward weaponry, humans found ways to make those inefficiencies an advantage. "Roar," Griggs said quietly, breaking the captain's thoughts. "You know they're not going to stop. Not until we're gone." Roar grunted. "They can try. Let's make them regret it." He pointed at the tactical display, where an alien destroyer loomed ahead of them. "Bring us about. I want to hit them hard before we jump." The destroyer was a masterpiece of Coalition design, its surface bristling with energy weapons and defensive turrets. It should have been an easy fight for the aliens, but when the Iron Resolve charged forward, belching fire from jury-rigged cannons and leaking coolant from half its systems, the destroyer faltered. Its alien crew, members of the hyperlogical Kroll species, hesitated, their programming unable to comprehend why a clearly inferior ship would attack so recklessly. That hesitation cost them. "Firing all batteries," Griggs shouted. The Iron Resolve spat a hail of projectiles at the destroyer, smashing through its forward shields and punching holes in its hull. Alien energy beams lashed out in retaliation, scoring deep gouges in the human ship's armor. But the Iron Resolve kept coming. Like every human ship in the fleet, It was built to take a beating. The destroyer exploded in a silent burst of light. Roar allowed himself a grim smile. That's one less ship in our way. Griggs, prep the jump. Hayes, start us on the core. Core's stable enough, Hayes shouted back over the intercom. Just don't ask how long it'll last. Good enough for me, Roar muttered. He didn't need perfection, he needed results. And that was the core of humanity's strategy in this war. While the Coalition operated on precision and certainty, humans thrived in chaos. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. As the Iron Resolve made its jump to the rendezvous point, Roar allowed himself a moment of reflection. The Coalition thought humanity was weak because their strategies were messy, their ships unreliable, their victories hard-fought. But it was that very messiness that gave humanity its edge. Where other species saw defeat, humans saw opportunity. Where others retreated, humans improvised. And where others gave up, humans dug in their heels and fought harder. Roar knew the war was far from over. The Coalition had countless ships, resources beyond measure, and a cold, calculating hatred for humanity. But they didn't have humanity's most potent weapon, sheer, unrelenting stubbornness. Because when all else failed, when the odds were impossible and the enemy insurmountable, humanity didn't break. They patched the reactor core with duct tape, loaded their cannons with scrap metal, and charged headfirst into the fight. Roar grinned. The Coalition had no idea what they were up against. The jump was rough. Sparks flew, metal groaned, and a few unlucky crew members were thrown from their stations as the Iron Resolve tore through subspace. Captain Roar braced himself against the armrest of his chair, shouting orders over the cacophony. "Hold it together, men. Griggs, status on our trajectory?" Griggs squinted at the flickering display, smacking it once with his fist to steady the image. "We're off by 2 degrees, but we're in range to correct, sir." "Do it," Roar ordered, his knuckles white as he gripped the chair. He could feel the strain in the ship, every creak and shudder a reminder of how much they'd pushed it past its limits. Yet, like its crew, the Iron Resolve refused to quit. The view outside stabilized, and the swirling chaos of subspace gave way to the cold, infinite black of normal space. Ahead of them loomed the rendezvous point, a hastily assembled staging ground for what remained of humanity's battered fleet. Dozens of ships, each scarred by battle and patched together with whatever scraps they could find, floated in a loose formation around a hollowed-out asteroid that served as their command hub. Hayes's voice crackled over the intercom. "She's still holding, Captain, but I wouldn't push it much further. She's running on borrowed time." Roar smirked. "Borrowed time is the only kind we've got." Corporal Griggs turned his face grim. "Captain, incoming transmission from Admiral Kana." Roar nodded. "Patch him through." The central display flickered and Admiral Kana's stern face appeared. His uniform was crisp, but his expression carried the weariness of a man who'd spent too many sleepless nights holding a fragile line against an overwhelming enemy. "Roar, good to see you made it. Report." "We took down a Coalition destroyer on the way here," ROR said. "The ship's held together, but just barely. Supplies are low, and we're running out of time to keep limping along like this." Kana nodded. "You've done well, as always, but the situation's worse than you think. We intercepted a Coalition transmission. Looks like they're massing for a final push. If we don't hit them first, they'll wipe us out." "Then we'll hit them first," ROR said without hesitation. "What's the target?" Kana's face tightened. "A supply hub on the edge of Coalition space. Taking it out won't win the war, but it'll buy us time and cripple their ability to resupply for months. I won't sugarcoat it. This mission is a long shot. Half our fleet won't make it back, and the other half might not either." "Understood, sir," ROR said. "When do we move?" "Tomorrow at 0600, Kana replied. "I've already sent the coordinates to your ship. Make whatever repairs you can and prep your crew. We're counting on you, ROR. The transmission ended, and for a moment the bridge was silent. Then Hayes's voice broke through the stillness. Did I hear that right? We're going on the offensive with half a fleet and duct tape holding us together? Griggs chuckled darkly. Sounds like a Tuesday to me. Get to work, ROR barked, his tone brooking no argument. We're not here to debate the odds. We're here to win. The hours before the mission were a frenzy of activity in the bowels of the Iron Resolve. Hayes and his team worked like madmen, patching up systems, routing power, and scavenging parts from less critical sections of the ship. It wasn't elegant, but it was effective. A testament to humanity's knack for making do with what they had. In the barracks, the men shared nervous laughter and stories to distract themselves from the impending fight. They knew what they were up against. The coalition didn't just have numbers, they had precision. Every move they made was calculated to the last decimal, their strategies honed by centuries of simulation and analysis. Against that, humanity had only one advantage: unpredictability. ROR spent the evening reviewing the mission plan with his officers. The supply hub was heavily defended, its perimeter bristling with automated turrets and coalition warships. The fleet would split into 3 groups, with the Iron Resolve leading the central assault. Their goal was simple: punch a hole through the enemy's defences, reach the hub, and detonate a payload large enough to reduce it to rubble. The plan was suicidal, but that didn't matter. What mattered was making the coalition bleed. Captain Griggs said as they wrapped up the briefing, "You think they'll finally give up after this?" ROR shook his head. "No, but they'll remember us." When the fleet arrived at the supply hub, the coalition was ready. Enemy ships swarmed like hornets, their sleek forms cutting through space with surgical precision. Automated turrets fired streams of plasma, lighting up the void with deadly bursts of energy. "All ships, engage!" ROR shouted, gripping the edge of his chair as the Iron Resolve dove into the fray. The human fleet moved like a pack of wolves, chaotic, uncoordinated, and ferociously effective. Coalition ships, designed to counter predictable strategies, struggled to adapt to the humans' wild tactics. Some warships accelerated straight into the enemy lines, sacrificing themselves to open gaps in the defences. Others feigned retreat, only to swing back around in surprise attacks. The Iron Resolve charged straight into the chaos, its cannons blazing. Griggs called out targets. Hayes screamed damage reports over the intercom, and ROR barked orders with the calm of a man who had nothing left to lose. "Target the nearest turret cluster," ROR ordered. "Hayes, we need those shields back online now." "Working on it, Captain," Hayes shouted back. "Just keep us alive a little longer." A nearby human ship exploded, its debris peppering the Iron Resolve's hull. ROR winced, but didn't look away from the display. The hub was in sight now, its massive structure illuminated by the flashes of battle. They were close, but so was the coalition's main defensive line. "Griggs, give me full power to engines," ROR said. "We're punching through." Griggs hesitated. "Captain, that'll leave us defenceless." "Do it," ROR snapped. "We're not stopping now." The Iron Resolve roared forward, its engine straining as it hurtled toward the supply hub. The Iron Resolve plunged into the heart of the battle, a battered predator amidst a sea of perfect machines. Plasma fire rained down on it from all sides as the coalition's forces focused their efforts on the reckless human ship. Griggs barked warnings as the shields buckled under the onslaught, while Hayes cursed over the intercom, desperately rerouting power from non-essential systems to keep the engines running. "Shields at 15%, Griggs shouted, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "Hold steady," ROR barked. The hub loomed larger in the view screen, its structure bristling with turrets and swarms of coalition interceptors. "We're not here to survive," ROR said. "We're here to finish the job." Ahead of them, 2 human ships broke formation and surged toward the enemy line. Their crews knew the stakes, and they didn't hesitate. Plasma batteries erupted from the coalition ships, turning one of the human vessels into a ball of fire and debris. The second slammed directly into an enemy cruiser, the explosion carving a hole wide enough for the Iron Resolve to barrel through. "Griggs, target that opening." "Hayes, divert everything to forward thrust. I want us through that gap before they can seal it." The Iron Resolve surged ahead, its battered hull groaning under the strain. Roar could see the hub now in stark detail, a sprawling labyrinth of supply depots and energy conduits. This was the beating heart of the Coalition's war effort. If they could destroy it, they could cripple the enemy's ability to wage war for months. "Captain, Coalition reinforcements incoming," Griggs warned. 2 heavy cruisers closing fast. Roar's jaw tightened. They wouldn't make it to the hub before the reinforcements arrived, but they didn't need to. "Griggs, arm the payload. Hayes, prepare for remote detonation." There was a pause, then Hayes's voice crackled through the comms. "Captain, you're not seriously—" "Do it, Corporal!" Roar said firmly. "This isn't about us anymore. It's about sending a message." The Iron Resolve hurtled toward the hub, its course locked in. Coalition ships closed in from all directions, their weapons tearing into the human vessel with precision. The ship shuddered violently as a direct hit took out one of the engines, but ROR didn't flinch. "Payload good, armed," Captain Griggs said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Good. All hands, abandon ship. Get to the escape pods and launch immediately." The bridge crew hesitated for a fraction of a second, then sprang into action. Griggs and the others rushed toward the exits, but Roar stayed seated, his eyes fixed on the view screen. "Captain, that means you too," Griggs shouted from the doorway. "Not this time, Lieutenant," Roar said, a faint smile on his lips. "Someone's got to make sure this thing hits its mark. Go, that's an order." Griggs hesitated, then saluted sharply before disappearing down the corridor. Moments later, the Iron Resolve's escape pods launched, streaking away from the doomed ship like fireflies scattering into the void. Roar sat alone on the bridge, the sound of alarms and groaning metal all around him. He watched as the hub filled the view screen, its defences firing desperately at the incoming ship. It wouldn't be enough. Humans had always been underestimated, and that was the Coalition's fatal mistake. With a calmness that surprised even himself, Roar reached for the detonator. The ship was moments from impact. He allowed himself one last thought, a quiet pride in humanity's sheer stubborn refusal to go quietly. "For Earth," he whispered and pressed the button. The Iron Resolve slammed into the hub, the explosion ripping through the massive structure. A chain reaction followed as the payload detonated, sending shockwaves that tore the hub apart. Coalition ships scrambled to retreat, but the damage was done. The Coalition supply hub was obliterated, and with it, their carefully calculated plans for galactic domination. Far from the wreckage, the escape pods drifted silently through space, their occupants staring back at the distant explosion. Griggs sat in the cramped confines of his pod, his expression a mix of grief and triumph. "They'll remember us now," he muttered to himself. And they did. And that's a wrap on today's wild ride through the stars. If you enjoyed the relentless spirit of humanity and the epic showdown with the Coalition, don't forget to hit that like button. It helps more than you know. And if you want more intense, action-packed sci-fi and HFY stories like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss out on the next adventure. Got thoughts or theories? Drop them in the comments below. I love hearing from you. And hey, if you know someone who's a fan of sci-fi or humanity fighting back stories, share this with them. Let's keep growing this awesome community. Until next time, stay stubborn and keep fighting.